Oh, and I see Daniel there. Aloha, everybody.
Aloha.
Um, this is a talk about men and masculinity, and we are going to offer our thoughts and opinions and questions. And it's a dialogue. You can make comments in the comments box. You can ask questions. You can join the conversation. I don't think any one of us are going to say that we're the definitive opinion about where masculinity is headed, where it is now. But we are going to be wrestling with some of the tough topics of what it means to be a man right now and the different generations. I'm 66 years old. I come from a different generation, 2 generations or so from some people. And what are my expectations? What do I want in a relationship, and what does my partner want from me? So we're going to wrestle with a bunch of those questions tonight. I'm Paul Sterling. I am the best-selling author of Argue Less, Love More. I am a relationship, communication, and intimacy coach, and I just spent last weekend teaching an amazing course called the Couples Course. So I'm going to introduce our other speakers here in a second. You are on a call that is put together by Scott Katamas of Love Coach Academy, Debbie G from Spirituality Gone Wild, and myself from Argue Less, Love More. And there's a whole bunch of love coaches and other people that are all showing up because one of the basic human needs that we have is to contribute. And this is a chance for us to contribute and make a difference and reach out to the people that are in this challenging, changing, stressful time, give them tips, tools, and techniques so that it brings us closer, so that we meet compassionately and courageously and take this on as an opportunity to make humanity better. All right, so there's my conversation of the day. This is about making humanity better. I have been coaching couples for about almost 30 years. I got my initiation from working for Tony Robbins. I was on his staff, and then I got hired by him. Tony was my boss, and I look at my life before Tony and after Tony, and that's what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be a transformational experience that leaves a legacy of love. And I am extremely proud to be on this call with these two amazing men. So, Angel, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us how you got on this path?
Thank you so much, Paul. You can hear me, yes?
Yes.
All right. I'm Angel B. I am a relationship guide, a spiritual guide, and a men's circle facilitator, amongst other things. I'm a world traveler and a community builder. And so I got on this path of supporting people in relationship because ever since I was a young one, I always was curious about what made people do or choose what they chose. And so I was just coming always from a place of curiosity, which led me into just a bigger curiosity of life, philosophy, spirituality, and then psychology and relationships as a big part of our human potential and human development. So yeah, it's been a long journey. Much of it just through curiosity, and then later through study, and later through my work in the commercial world as a consumer behavior strategist and specialist, working in advertising and marketing communications for 25 years. And now I'm working in the field of really trying to both help myself and help others understand what really fulfills life. And in those realms, we cross into spirituality, relationships, and purpose. So that's what I help people with.
So let me ask a couple of quick questions, then we'll bounce to Daniel. But it looks like you're in the jungle. Where are you on the planet right now?
I'm in the jungle. I'm in the jungle in Bali, in
Ah,
Indonesia.
I,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love Bali. I've taught over in Ubud before, and yeah, it was an amazing experience. So I miss it right now. And then the other question I had, you used the term that has actually been new to me, and I've been in this area a while. So a relationship guide. Can you just what the hell does that mean?
Well, I think that generally people, for me, learn best when they find their own solutions, when they find their own answers. And so I don't pretend to be an expert or to have the right answers for my clients. I help them find their own deeper truths and guide them to their truths through different techniques and tools that I've developed and that I've been granted also through my association and teachings with the Love Coach Academy and other beautiful platforms that do this work. So yeah, I help guide people to a deeper sense of clarity and truth. Um, and I can happy to share more about that later. But yeah, guiding as opposed to instructing.
Got it. It's sort of like I got the picture of Yoda sending what is it, Skywalker into the cave. The answers to relationships are in the cave.
In the cave, exactly.
And we are like at one point, maybe in the 40s or 50s, there was sort of the handbook of relationships. And, what would be a common conversation that would be politically incorrect right now is like, oh, that woman looks like she would be good doing laundry and having kids, childbearing. And just as equally as sort of inappropriate or whatever you want to call it, that man looks like we could work him to death and he'd be good with a watch after 30 years. It's like we had these roles that sort of didn't work that well then. They might have a little bit, but now we are in the cave of what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Or a man, a woman. It's like what do relationships even mean and what do they look like? So we're going to dive into more of that, but I want to hear Daniel. Aloha, you're also in the tropics.
Aloha. Yeah, I'm here on the big island of Hawaii on the Puna side. And thank you, Paul. And it's an honor to be here with you and Angel. And yeah, I've had the experience of being guided by Angel into the cave of my wisdom. And it was very helpful. Very helpful. Thank you again, brother. And I've been a professional artist for 20 years, primarily. Breaking away from that paradigm you were just talking about of being a man who could be worked until for 30 years and then given a watch and be satisfied with that. I broke from that paradigm and became self-empowered, struggled for a long time, living sometimes a very simple life in order to really be the person I want to be. And I think in the process of that, I learned a lot about myself and have then found myself doing work around men and I've been involved in a men's group for 11 years now, sitting in circle every week and being involved in annual, sometimes biannual, intensive weekends to introduce men to their mature masculine. And we call it an initiation from boyhood to manhood. And I've gained so much from that practice. And we've also...
Daniel,
yes.
before you go beyond that, there's so much right there. Like we have moved culturally from, what we call the natives or uncultured tribes typically actually have very strong rituals about becoming a man and manhood. And we've lost that in this whole thing. And masculinity, we've kind of lost what it means to be a man. And so I'm curious about your rituals and their impact. And for the feminine that's listening on this call, I just want to say thank you. You're welcome here. And want to go bounce back to Daniel in a second, but I want to just say that I taught in prison for about 8.5 years. I would go in once a month. And a lot of times I worked with the men's side, and I called that a feminist issue. Because when masculine don't know how to deal with their upset, their anger, their communication, the women and the children tend to take the brunt. So this whole journey into our masculine power, and to use that power in a way that serves us and serves community and serves the people we love, rather than using it to endanger people. And there has been a lot more at-home violence, right? Domestic violence during this time, because the masculine hasn't learned how to deal with our pain in a lot of ways. And so thank you for the rituals, Angel, you guys, and you. And the only thing I'm going to say, the last thing, and hand it back to you, is that hurt people hurt people. What we need is, I understand why we need prisons, because I spent 8.5 years, like I said, teaching there. But what we need more is healing places. Because a lot of times prisons hurt people more, and they come out like waiting to blow up somewhere. Until they go on a ritual, until they meet somebody like the two of you, or it's like they're a time bomb waiting to go off. So I'm going to hand it back to you, but I am going to thank Madeline for joining us, and Miranda and Todd. And if whoever's out there just wants to say hi and where you're calling in from, and if you've got any questions about this or thoughts, just enter the dialogue and discussion. So Daniel, back to you.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah. Just to answer your question about what do we do as a ritual, I would say we have a circle where we hold each other accountable, and we create a safe space so that we can experience that any emotion, but specifically anger, in a safe way. Express it and experience it and support each other in it in a safe way, to get it out in a way that doesn't hurt anybody. And so often underneath that anger, so often is grief that we find, and we get in touch with that grief, and that's when the healing really takes place, So anyway, so my experience has been with men's groups. And we've spun off from the men's group and created a couples group that we've been involved in for 7 years, co-created with the women who have brought their part sort of like from the Women Within and other women's organizations. And we've created this evening that we spend together supporting and exploring each other's relationships. And so one of the key things about that is when we sit together as a couple amongst other couples, and we get vulnerable and share what's going on, it's amazing how common, I think I'm alone. We think we're the only ones experiencing it, but so many of the issues are shared with so many other couples, and just that alone is so healing, to know we're not alone in it. And then we can explore, with each other, which has been so powerful. And so between those experiences, and I've been empathetic. I don't know how I became so empathetic, but I tend to be able to tune into feelings that other people are feeling, and hold space, and do it in a place where I'm where I'm not judging the other person, so it's safe. And then studying NVC, I stumbled across Scott and Emily and got introduced to this a few years ago.
Daniel, you use the word NVC. I'm familiar with it, but I just want to keep everybody on a level field here.
Yeah.
So what is NVC?
So NVC stands for nonviolent communication, or compassionate communication is kind of what we say a lot today. And that was started by Marshall Rosenberg, who Scott Katamas was very close with for a while. And he's gotten a lot of his teachings and is sharing them with us. And it's just a way of communicating that where we get in touch with our feelings and with our needs, and we get in touch with another's feelings and with their needs. And again, it's like that. There's a magic that happens when my needs or somebody's needs and feelings are understood. There's something happens. There's like this opening and this healing potential that seems to appear.
So let me offer one thing, because I'm just guessing, and I know that for me, when I first started studying with Marshall, it was like the idea, well, I'm not a violent person, so I don't need nonviolent communication. And there's a distinction there. It's like when I give up my needs so that you get your needs met, I'm being violent to myself. Mm-hmm. And when I make my needs more important than your needs, I'm being violent to you. So the concept of nonviolent communication is not necessarily about physical violence, but it's like your needs and my needs are equal. Like if I'm a parent and I say my needs are more important than the kids, see, I'm like using force then. And it's like in relationships, how do we do this dance? So I wanted to just bring that up and ask one other question, because this will tie in, and Angel, if you want to answer in there too. But the work with men, the difference between primary and secondary emotions, and why men, like I have literally had clients that would rather jump out of an airplane at night into enemy territory where people want to kill them than talk about their feelings. Mm-hmm. And I can think of the guy's face. The whole thing. He felt more vulnerable talking about his feelings than he did risking his life. So why is it that is there, and what is the secondary emotion? So I'm asking the dual question here for anybody who wants to answer. Go for it.
So yeah, it's such a beautiful question. Emotional intelligence, which I prefer to relate to as emotional intimacy, is like how close can you get to your emotions. It's not just intelligence like, oh, I understand anger is this, sadness is this. That's really how connected are you to your emotional body. And people may be confused. What do you mean by emotional body? Well, our body is a physical body, but it's also an energetic body. And so all of these impulses that flow through our being are flow and energy forms. And so what I've noticed is when I can't or don't express an emotion, it actually gets almost physically stuck in my body. We stuff it down and it stays there until we allow it to move again. So one of the things I teach about emotional intimacy and emotions generally is that, simple term, emotions means emotion, energy in motion. And we're all familiar with that, but this is the simple concept that a lot of men are like, oh, wow, yeah, energy in motion. So, going to this question, the primary emotions are just, for me, the very surface level ones, fear, sadness, disgust, and so on. And there are a number of others, so just a few. But then the secondary emotions are really what's going on beneath that? What's going on beneath your anger? Can you really connect and name what it is that's really going on? Like even anger itself has a broad range of expressions. You know, am I frustrated? Am I, furious? Am I just completely ready to go berserk? Or am I just like, a little annoyed or pissed off or whatever? So anger has a whole range of different possibilities of expression. And so this is what I like to work with men, is at least this first step of being able to name what it is you're actually feeling, not just, oh, I'm angry. Well, that doesn't really help, your partner or the other person understand or relate to where you're at in that moment. Obviously, for me and people who are connected a little bit more to their emotional body, you sense the energy. And I think a lot of people are put off by things like anger because it's such an intense energy. They're not necessarily thinking, well, anger just means danger. Well, the danger, perhaps, that they're sensing actually comes from the energetic flow between the person who's feeling angry and the target of that anger. And so this is one of the things we work with as well, particularly in relationships, is, can I express my anger without targeting it, without directing it at that person? Can I just share it because this is how I'm feeling and I want that to be known. I want that to be understood and felt, without, what tends to often happen without the conscious communication and without skills such as nonviolent communication, is that we direct the anger and that becomes blaming and shaming, which then has can have a very lasting and detrimental impact to people around us.
Yeah, and I just want to add something to that and give it back to you or Daniel, but in our family of origin, there tends to be certain emotions that are okay to express and feel, and other ones that are not okay to express and feel. And if you look at our culturally, like, just watch Netflix tonight, how many movies are there where the hero, the protagonist, gets to express their rage and violence and attack people when if you're upset enough, violence is okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, because we're uncomfortable with these other sets of feelings, like in my family, violence and anger was okay. For some people, not for me, because I was a little kid. But being vulnerable and sad and scared was not okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we moved to where we want to feel safer. And so violence for a lot of men, typically, but not, there's women that lean into the violence too, because that's their safe place. So I don't want to make it wrong, but I want to give them other alternatives, like Angel B, you're talking about, like, if I feel it, if I'm willing to feel it and go from something that is our routine or our pattern, our unconscious pattern, and turn it into a ritual, like Daniel's talking about, like we in a safe ritual, we can express our anger and our rage, because a lot of us have had our hearts broken and had things were painful. So, Daniel, do you want to add any more, or should we switch to Daniel and hear your?
Yeah, and so often when we have had our heart broken or we've been hurt, we haven't expressed it in the moment, and it has gotten into our body and into our being, and it still needs to be expressed, and oftentimes it's lost to our consciousness. We don't even know it's there anymore. And so to get in touch, like for myself, to get in touch with, I can be feeling a feeling and not really realize it, not even be aware of it. But if someone was to ask me, so what are you thinking, or what are you judging about this situation? I can easily access that, and I can, like, oh yeah, this is, and then the feeling comes. Yeah. Then it awakens the feeling, and the next question can be asked. So now, what are you feeling about that?
And we've got this one too, in case we're in the reptile brain. So we're communicating from 3 different places.
Yeah.
Our head, and when you're communicating from your head, it's like logic, reason, facts, who's right, who's wrong. And that tends to be a more masculine trait. And we get rewarded for that in business. We rarely get rewarded for like having our feelings. And then we're communicating from our heart, which is all about connection and intimacy and feeling our feelings. And then we also communicate from our hurt. And that's about like safety and who's the enemy? Where do I have to protect myself from? And I want to I'll be politically incorrect. There are some sort of new age cliche-ish things that take us away from connecting more deeply to ourselves and others. And one is when people say, I don't feel safe. And I'm not arguing against it, but what I think most of the time, what they mean is I don't feel comfortable. And there's a huge difference between whether I'm safe, like nobody's trying to hurt me, damage me, they're not going to hit me, but I feel really uncomfortable talking about my feelings and my needs and making requests, because we're in a culture of need shame. I was just talking to a client this morning, and it's like she says, I've spent most of my life thinking I shouldn't have needs because then I'll seem needy and men won't want me. And now I'm independent and all alone. But boy, can I take care of myself. Sort of. So it's an interesting dance with our needs. So maybe you guys could take that for a test drive. What's your relationship with your needs, and what is a need?
Yeah, I'd love to speak with that a bit. Just from personal experience, my childhood felt very much like my needs were not welcome. I actually had the nickname growing up that my family gave me as Mr. What About Me? I was always like, oh, what about me? What about me? And that persistence of like, what about me? What about me? Came because I didn't feel like my needs were being addressed. They weren't being met. And so, what you resist persists. And so I was persistent and kept getting that feedback. Well, no, stop whining, stop being crybaby, all of these things. And so at some point, I just my coping mechanism was to say, well, okay, well, my needs don't matter. I'm not going to get them met. And all I'm getting is this, shut up, be quiet. We don't want to hear you. And so my strategy to cope with that was that my needs don't matter. And it's interesting to see how that plays out as an adult. There's the uncomfortable side of that, which is like, well, how good have I been at stating my needs now in partnerships and my relationships? How good have I been at holding my boundaries or even realizing what my boundaries are? I've not been very good. And then there's the possible positive side of giving my needs away is, well, I've become a pleaser. I've become the person who loves to take care of others and is very good at taking care of everybody else. Because if my needs weren't being met, then what need did I have for taking care of myself? Well, I might as well take care of everybody else. So, it's very interesting to see these things, and really needs are so important because ultimately, as human beings, and with a somewhat of an identity that we most have, we all have this. We have basic desires, basic wants, but needs are even deeper. There are these aspects of our self-worth, like belonging. There's a whole list of them, obviously. But if we can't speak them, then how are we actually going to have a chance at resolving them? Because typically we look for our needs to be met by others. It's only a very few of us who are well resourced or have really good coping mechanisms that we can meet our own needs. But ultimately, as human beings, we are communal beings, and so we look to each other to co-survive and to help each other through our independent struggles.
So
yeah, being able to identify your needs is important.
Yeah, I'd love to interject into that and then get to Daniel. Just ask, it's like, if we, with this culture of need shame, that if we have needs, we're needy. What ends up happening, and you said it well, so beautifully, it's like making your needs matter again. And part of the whole work I do with couples is to take needs from burden to feeling precious. Because the main reason to be in a relationship is to meet your needs. And when you stop getting your needs met in a relationship, you stop feeling like you matter. And one of our needs is to contribute. So it's not like just narcissistic, just take care of me, I'll just sit here and you bring me everything. What happens when my needs are met, I want to meet other people's needs. So it's this beautiful design that we've somehow screwed up a little bit because we shame people about their needs. And if someone's uncomfortable, like if your family of origin, Angel B, is uncomfortable with their needs and you start expressing yours, they're like inside going, listen, I can't take care of my needs. I'm ashamed of them. So stop reminding me, stop making noise.
Right.
And it's one of the 7 core things that I'm teaching in a course and Scott teaches, but effective communication and these needs getting met, because one of the problems is needs not met. And then we end up in fear of conflict and wounds and triggers, broken trust, lost intimacy. All of these things are the 7 core skills that I think people need to create the relationship of their dreams, to navigate in that cave and figure out what are they going to do in the cave of relationship and how are they going to make it work. So, and I'll actually put a banner underneath so people can see there's a course coming up in June, and then I'm going to bounce to Daniel. Let's see if I could do modern technology. Oh,
it was there. There it is.
You got it.
There it is. Yeah. Oh, that's so fancy. All right, that's too much. All right. So, Daniel, what do you want to say about in this world of needs?
Well, Angel, when you were talking about yourself, it's like you were talking about me. It's like I was watching myself talk about my needs and how they don't matter. And in the language that I've gotten used to using in my men's group, a belief about myself that isn't true is referred to as a shadow. And these shadows can take over the bus, like take the steering wheel and start driving my life and making decisions as to where we're going without when I am unaware of them, and I just allow it to happen. And so when I'm doing work on myself, we often do personal work each week, and we get down to, okay, well, what's the shadow driving that behavior? And it can drive so many behaviors. So often I get to that place, I don't matter, my needs don't matter. And it's just like, oh, that again. Oh, that took over and had, made this decision or broke that agreement or said this negative thing about myself or hurt that person unconsciously because I was no longer conscious of my decisions, and my belief that I don't matter, my needs don't matter, took over. And then to see that and just to shine the light on it one more time and to reclaim that part of myself, and that part of myself that made that up at one point was really, it didn't have any malicious intent with me. It really was trying to protect me. and just to like reclaim that part of myself, bring it in, but keep it in front of me. So I'm like, okay, you're not gonna sneak around and do that again, because I have my eye on you now, and I love you and appreciate you for wanting to take care of me and protect me. And
Daniel, I want to ask you a question because you said something that people might not get. You said you work on this like every week. And there's two ways of thinking about this. Like one way, one belief, and I work a lot with people's beliefs and my own. One belief is sort of like you fix it and then it's done.
right.
The other one is it's like you go to the gym and you don't go to the gym once a year. If you want to stay in shape, you work out every day, maybe, or 3 or 4 times a week. So a lot of people are thinking the only time they work on themselves is when something's broken or wrong.
Right.
And I do it once a year, whether I need it or not. And we're saying at least once a week, I thought I heard there. So
yes.
I hear what your relationship to it is. And do you think that, and there's a lot of, especially for men, so I'm mixing questions in here, but a lot of times for the masculine thinks that like therapy or coaching or something like that is where they're going to pay a therapist to gang up with their partner and let them know how bad, stupid, and wrong they are. And it's going to suck. And they have to pay for it.
Right.
So it's not what I know any of you do. It's not what Love Coach Academy does or Scott, but that is in the cultural sort of norm of what people expect. So what's different about it, and how do you do it with compassion, even for yourself, rather than to beat yourself into submission? And
well, we've learned to tune into our it usually comes up in a couple of ways. One, when we're out of integrity or out of accountability and we've broken an agreement, and then we can explore what's going on because of that. Or in another way, when another person has triggered us, and we really for sure think it's about them, and we have this process that you go into it just saying, okay, I have to at least intellectually agree that this is about me, and I'm going to learn something about me and not that person. It's not about that person. And so it's these are like the two main ways that identify work that is constant. Like I always have work that I'm working on every week, and everybody in my men's group does. And it's like
example?
It's like this whole construct of my life, and it's just like one little piece at a time, one dismantling things that aren't working and things that aren't true, one little piece at a time, until after a long period of time, you can notice a big difference. So it's nothing that happens all at once. So an example could be like, I agreed to come and mow your lawn on Wednesday, and I didn't show up, and I didn't call you. And then I see you on Thursday, and I'm like, oh man, I can feel it, and it's between us, and there's no avoiding it. It's an elephant in the room. And so if I'm being accountable, then I bring it up before you do. And I said, I had this agreement with you, and I broke it. And then I can explore, okay, what are the impacts that it had on you? What are the impacts that it had on me? And what was driving the behavior? And that's where the work is. what was driving this behavior? Now, it could have been that I made the agreement to mow the lawn, and I was coming from a shadow there where I just wanted to please you in the moment. And I knew that I wasn't going to follow through already. Or I got lazy or just didn't feel like it and didn't have the courage to call and change my agreement. And so there's a shadow driving that behavior. And so we can then explore, okay, so what did I make more important? And it's not like, oh, I went to a movie, I made that more important. No, it's I made more important, and it's usually something about like I got something out of it. I got something out of making the agreement with you, even though I knew I wasn't going to follow through. In that moment, you liked me. You respected me. I got your attention, and that's what I got out of it. Or I didn't show up, and what I got out of it was this. I was even if I was like just taking care of myself, I decided to go for a walk instead, and I took care of myself, but I still didn't communicate with you. So it's and then from there, so what was driving that? What was driving that behavior? And more often than not, I get to the place where I don't matter. And so I was meeting my needs of mattering by making an agreement with you in the first place. And the way you looked at me when I said, I'll mow your lawn, I felt like I mattered in that moment. And that fed the shadow. Or if I didn't show up to mow your lawn, but I went for a walk instead, it's like, you know what? I matter more than that. So I'm going to take care of myself. And, both of them have these negative consequences, or these hurtful consequences that break trust. And they have,
there's
as an example.
That is a great example in trust. And it's really important in relationships because there is the verbal agreements, the ones that I know I made, and there's also a whole series of implicit agreements. Implicit agreements that you only know are there once you break them. See, sometimes people don't say, are we in a monogamous relationship? Now, more conscious couples do have that conversation, but it's like, oh, all of a sudden you were holding hands with somebody else, you're doing something. It's like there's this, like, a lot of times agreements are unspoken until broken. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, how do you build trust in a relationship is to make agreements and then keep the agreements and then be accountable. You brought up a key thing here is if I make an agreement with Angel B to do something and then I don't do it, and then I don't tell him, I make him come to me and be accountable for my word. That will reduce trust a lot. And a lot of times people do this and then they go, well, Angel B's just a nag. He's just nagging me. Well, actually holding me accountable to my word because he wants to get back in harmony with our relationship rather than believe that I'm somebody who doesn't keep their word. And so this is so critical in relationships. You can love somebody you don't trust and you can trust somebody you don't love. And the odd example of that right now is my dog is on the low trust list. Great dog, a young puppy, 1 year old. And the other day we were on a walk and I let him off the leash a lot. And then he vanished into the brush and didn't come back for like 10 or 15 minutes. And he went from being in a high trust position, let him off the leash, and stuff to like, no, we're keeping you locked down. And I still love him just as much, but this is the same thing in relationships. How do we create trust in relationships? How do we keep agreements? Angel, I know you're just a fountain of wisdom from Molly. What do you got to say about all this?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting topic because, and I want to bring it into, like, I think the conversation is like, well, masculinity in 2020, there's old paradigm models of masculinity where, I'm inquiring into for myself, what does a new paradigm of trustability look like? What does integrity mean to an evolving man? I wouldn't say evolved because that's an ongoing process. Integrity and trust that kind of are very related, right? You started talking, Daniel, about integrity, owning your responsibility, your side of it. I want to come to you to share that, I didn't do this, and address it, not just leave it as this uncomfortable, like, oh, fuck, I messed up, in the old paradigm for me, and this is just for me, integrity is, you got to be true to your word. If you said this, you have to do it. That's your integrity. Be true to your word. You said it, you're accountable for that. For me, and this is just my own personal evolution with integrity, is I don't feel that I don't feel that I'm out of integrity if I don't do something I said I was going to do, so long as I go back and either renegotiate or let them know in advance, or at least take responsibility for it as quickly as possible after it happens. That way I stay in touch with my integrity. So where does integrity exist? Does integrity exist in, the power of integrity? Does it exist with the person who you said, I'm going to mow your lawn? So, they're accountable, you're accountable to them for your integrity. Or does integrity exist within me? My view is that the old model is that integrity the power of integrity, the authority of it was in the hands of whoever you promised something to. For me, my new relationship with integrity, and which I think I'm encouraging with the men that I work with, is to claim it as your own authority. Always, your integrity is your own authority. To maintain that power of authority by being responsible with your word, not being obliged to your word.
So what does that mean? Because
What it means.
well, sometimes people think responsible means it's my fault and I'm going to blame. And if I just come humble enough and chagrin enough and apologize enough, that equals responsible. So what's your interpretation?
That's a great question, great inquiry. The word that stood out was chagrin. It's like, yeah, you can be like, you can play the manipulation games, nice smile, it's like, oh, I didn't really mean it, or, you can play how cute you are, how sweet you are, how handsome, good looking you are. You can play all the manipulation games when you're in the wrong, when you've been out of integrity. And, use those relational strategies to kind of come back into grace. So really, it's not about playing that. It's about owning it with authenticity. It's about being willing to step into the other person's shoes and asking them, I messed up, how I want to know. I'm curious as to how my choice or my behavior impacted you, and be willing to hear that, be willing to feel that, without, taking on an energy of blaming and shaming. It's not to make yourself feel bad. It's to allow yourself the opportunity to make good or to renegotiate, what needs were unmet. So really, I feel that, blaming and making wrong puts a block in the way of the needs to be met. It puts an end to that possibility, where in an integrous relationship, an integrous way of relating, it's to cultivate the continued possibility of having a need met. Yes, there will be an impact, or it didn't get done yesterday when I'd promised to do it. I can take responsibility for that and come back and offer to how can I make good on that? And yes, sometimes there may not be a way. It may be an irreversible initial impact, right? There's going to be a discomfort or a problem that it created for somebody else. But yeah, it's just, we're human. And so we all have to just stay in dialogue with our own feelings and be willing to feel our impact on other people's reality as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then part of it is a way of protecting ourselves. If I'm humble enough, if I apologize enough. But see, the problem with even an apology is then I'm making it about me.
Yeah.
Versus, Angel, we're talking about the impact. Like, rather than me being with the impact it had on you, I'm talking about how sorry I am, how all of those apologies are all me talking about me, hoping that if I talk about me enough, you'll forget that, I ran over your foot, or I didn't mow your lawn, or, I didn't. And so it's like, what are you willing to feel? And it's interesting. I highly recommend, if people haven't watched it, Brene Brown's talk on shame and a couple of other talks. But if you look at our leaders today, they're having a very hard time being with making mistakes. And I used to teach quality, productivity, and leadership. Like the city of Albuquerque, most of the top management from the departments went through my course on quality, productivity, and leadership. And if you're going to be a leader, there's a difference between a manager and a leader. A manager continues doing shit that's always been done, and it's like to do it better. And a leader is taking you into new areas, and if you're going in new areas, you're going to make mistakes.
Sure.
If you're taking your relationship to a new area, you're going to make mistakes. So what's your relationship with shame and mistakes and embarrassment? And if you can't be with it, you're going to suck as a leader, and you'll suck as a partner. And now that's me ranting a little bit there. But definitely check out the TED Talk by Brene Brown, or her talks on Netflix. She is a powerhouse of like authenticity. Coming from the divine feminine and masculine, she's good. I'm going to just put that banner up again and let people know that coming up June 6th is called the Couples Course, and it's for people who want to dive deep into the 7 skills here: effective communication, getting your needs met, conflict resolution, healing wounds and triggers, rebuilding trust, dealing with the 3 shades of intimacy, and handling differences, difficulties, and decisions in a way that brings you together rather than tears you apart. Now, that's just one of many ways. If you want to go on this, and I'm just going to bring this up for a second. I'm going to call it's the hero's journey. This is the hero's journey to the heart. And when I did that, we lost somebody there. Daniel popped off, so I'm going to bring us all back up. And you should be back in a second. All right.
There he is.
I think so. The other thing that's available is Love Coach Academy. Scott Katanis, who I think almost everybody here has been on some of his courses. I look at me as I'm sort of the mad professor, and I'm doing the charts, and I'm analyzing it, and I'm systematizing it, and I'm going to make the invisible visible. Scott is masterful at the heart. He is someone who is the king of empathy and compassion and teaches that. So every evening at 6 o'clock, every morning at 9 o'clock West Coast time, we do a call. I won't say like this, I would say similar in some ways. The intent is to help people be compassionate, connected, communicate, and feel a sense of harmony when there is a chance for so much distancing. And how do we help people go through challenge and change and stress in a way that brings us together? And these are designed, I work mostly in the area of couples, but these are for couples, they're for singles, they're for families, they're for roommates, they're for people. So if you're a people, on these
Love Coach
calls.
Academy.
And the other thing is, if you want personalized and private coaching, all of us here have gotten our own coaches and we coach people. So if somebody resonates with your heart, you can reach out. And Love Coach Academy, there's a place where you can book it, or you can go to my website, Argue Less, Love More, and you can book a session and take that journey inside yourself. Find out how amazing you really are and make friends with your needs and your emotions, and get a black belt in emotional and get away from, because there's a world of what we call feelings that are not feelings at all. I feel manipulated. I feel used. I feel abused. I feel all of these different things that are actually judgments, and they push you apart. Because the key thing that I think everybody has used different words, but it's our behavior and our beliefs are either supporting us, and I don't know if you can even read it, but I'll read it out loud. We're either supporting us or they're sabotaging us. And this is what Daniel talked about, like the shadow side and all that. And we have to start looking at what brings us closer and what pushes us apart, what supports being in a relationship with us, and what sabotages us. So I'm kind of wrapping it up here, and I want to get both of your last thoughts. And I appreciate you guys and people who are listening out there. If you think this would be helpful, and even though we're calling it the men's group, so many interesting women have been on here, just supporting us, because there's an impact. As we heal ourselves, there's an impact. So, Daniel, what are your closing thoughts?
Well, Angel, when you were talking about integrity being within you and within each of us, I fully agree with that, and that my integrity is within me. And when I'm out of integrity, I'm breaking trust with myself ultimately, and to regain that trust with myself is really the most important thing I can do.
Oh,
yeah, really nice to be here with you guys today. I always get a lot out of it.
Thank you, Daniel. I just really appreciate your wisdom and your groundedness. Just a beautiful representation of what I think is, a modern new paradigm man, in terms of your sensitivity, your diligence to doing the work and to really communicating from the heart, and the continued work and dedication that takes. I really appreciate and see you, brother. So thank you. Yeah. For me, my mission, big part of my mission is working with men, and what I wish is to help redefine what was known to be the he-man. The he-man was a very valid thing at one time, strong, dominant, capable, all of these things. And it really had a lot to do with physicality and capacity and direction and dominance. And for me, those He-Man models of the old days, I want to redefine He-Man. I still like the term, but he being healthy, emotional man. So for me, the new paradigm, masculine man of 2020 and beyond is the He-Man, the healthy, emotional man. And that's really what my mission is, building the strength of our capacity for emotional intimacy and expression. The fullness of our expression will really help tap us into the fullness of our capacity in all areas of our life. Because communication and fullness of being is foundational to being whole and creating harmony in ourselves and in our communities.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Angel B and Daniel, and it's what I got from that is sort of the He-Man today, because it's like there's so many women talk to me and they want their man to get their growl back. They feel like their partner has almost been neutered. You know, like where's their growl? And part of their growl is the willingness to be with, rather than attacking, rather than fighting, but to be with fear, to be with vulnerability. That is the new courage. That's sort of like is to come from the heart. Because that is what courage, la coeur, from the French word, from the heart. So it's like, how do you come from your heart? And rather than collapse or get combative, how do you get courageous and communicate from that place? And that's what I see in both of you. And I adore about it. And, so thank you guys so much. And like I said, in the morning, we do this at 9 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock at night, Love Coach Academy. And thank you. Deborah said you guys are so inspiring, and it's great to hear, helpful to hear your journey. And so I hope the next generation can learn and build into what the three men are leading you to do. And Jessica said, this was a beautiful conversation to witness. Thank you for sharing your truth and past. It brings me hope with the evolving men, and also how I can rise in my connections. So ciao, everybody. Have a good night. Share this video with people you think can use this information.
Thank you so much, Paul. We appreciate your wisdom and your eldership and your masculinity and just your capacity for speaking truth and helping us inquire into what it is to be a new age masculine. Yeah, thank you. It's been fun.
Oh.